bar was alive with noise, the kind of bustling energy that comes from people laughing, talking, and celebrating the end of a long week. The lights were dim, casting a warm glow across the wooden tables, and the soft hum of music mixed with clinking glasses created a familiar, comfortable atmosphere. It was the kind of place where people came to forget their worries for a while, to let loose after the pressures of their everyday lives. Among the crowd, one figure stood out, not because of appearance but because of presence. He was a Navy SEAL, wearing casual clothes but carrying an unmistakable aura of discipline and confidence that comes only from years of elite training. His eyes scanned the room, not in search of anyone in particular, but with the calm awareness that only someone trained to notice small details could have. He had just returned from a long deployment, one that had pushed him to the edge of endurance, both physically and mentally. This bar, tucked away in a quiet part of the city, was his escape, a place to unwind without the heavy eyes of authority watching. He had come alone, wanting solitude, yet he couldn't resist the curiosity of observing the people around him. The laughter of friends, the quiet whispers at corners, the clinking of ice in glasses, all of it created a rhythm that, strangely, felt comforting. As he sat at the bar, nursing a drink and watching the crowd, his eyes fell on a woman sitting alone in the corner. She wasn't drawing attention to herself, but something about her presence made it impossible not to notice. She wasn't flashy, didn't have bright clothing or an unusual hairstyle. She was ordinary in appearance, yet there was an intensity in the way she held herself. Her posture was perfect, calm, almost regal in its simplicity. She sat quietly, observing the room, her eyes occasionally flicking toward people as if assessing them, but not in a way that was rude or judgmental. It was simply alert, calculating, aware. Curiosity sparked within the SEAL. Most people in bars were loud, seeking attention or companionship. But this woman didn't seem to care about the world around her in the usual way. It was a strange, magnetic energy, the kind that draws attention even when someone tries not to stand out. Something about her told him she was not to be underestimated. He found himself intrigued, a feeling he wasn't used to having so casually. Finally, driven by a mix of curiosity and a playful sense of humor, he decided to approach her. Navy SEALs are trained to assess situations quickly, and his instincts told him that this encounter might be interesting. He walked toward her table, his steps measured but confident, and with a hint of a smile, asked, almost jokingly, "So what's your call sign?" It was a casual question, something meant to break the ice, something he asked countless people before in different situations. Normally, the response would be a laugh, a shrug, maybe a playful nickname, nothing serious. But as soon as he asked, he noticed something subtle. Her eyes didn't flicker, her hands didn't twitch, her posture didn't change. She was unshaken, calm, and there was a strange weight behind her gaze that made him pause for a fraction of a second. Then she responded. Her voice was steady, clear, and confident. "Viper 1, she said. Just 2 words, simple, yet they carried a presence that was hard to ignore. It wasn't boastful, it wasn't loud, but it commanded attention in the quietest way possible. The SEAL blinked, almost in disbelief. He wasn't used to meeting people who exuded such quiet authority, especially not in a casual place like a bar. Most people's energy fades when they are surrounded by strangers, but this woman's energy was fully intact, unshakable, and even slightly intimidating. For a moment, the SEAL simply stared, unsure if he had heard correctly. His usual confidence, the kind that comes from training, experience, and facing life-and-death situations, felt slightly challenged. He had faced some of the toughest opponents in the world, yet this simple exchange, a call sign, nothing more, had caused a ripple of respect and curiosity he hadn't expected. It was a small, almost invisible moment, but it set the tone for everything that was about to unfold. Around them, the bar continued in its usual rhythm. Patrons laughed, the bartender poured drinks, and music played softly. Yet, for that brief moment, a different energy existed at the corner table. 2 people, both used to high-stakes situations in very different ways, had crossed paths in an ordinary bar. One had a life full of danger and discipline, The other carried an intensity and calm that hinted at experiences just as extraordinary. And just like that, an encounter that seemed casual and unremarkable on the surface held the first spark of a story that neither of them would soon forget. The seal leaned back slightly, trying to maintain his usual confident composure, but he couldn't help noticing her calm and steady gaze. Most people, when faced with someone clearly trained and experienced, would either be intimidated or overly eager to impress. Not her. She simply sat there, perfectly composed, as if the world around her didn't disturb her at all. There was something unusual about her calmness. A quiet strength that didn't need to be announced, but you felt it immediately. Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. They were sharp, almost like they could see through him, as if she were assessing every detail. His posture, his tone, the slight tension in his shoulders. Yet, unlike most people who might be intrusive or judgmental, there was no aggression in her gaze. It was just awareness, a kind of measured attention that came only from experience. The seal realized he had underestimated her presence. "You said, Viper One?" he asked again, this time with a slightly amused tone, trying to hide the flicker of surprise in his voice. He thought it was just a playful nickname, something she had picked up on a whim. Most people wouldn't expect a stranger at a bar to respond with confidence, let alone a name that sounded like it belonged to someone with serious military skills. He chuckled lightly, half to mask his curiosity and half to remind himself that this was supposed to be casual, a harmless conversation. She nodded, but her expression didn't change. "Viper One," she repeated, as if confirming something simple and factual. Her voice was steady, clear and confident. Not loud, not demanding, but it carried weight. That weight was the kind that made people stop and listen without even realizing why. The seal noticed how the other patrons nearby had started glancing in their direction. Drawn by something subtle, he could not yet put into words. There was a presence about her that made people pause, even in a crowded, noisy bar. He leaned forward slightly, intrigued. "That's an unusual call sign," he said. He tried to keep his tone casual, but there was a hint of curiosity he couldn't hide. "Most people here don't have names like that. How did you get it?" She smiled faintly, a small curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. There was no arrogance in the smile, only calm assurance. "I earned it," she said simply, and that was all. No explanation, no bragging, just the words themselves. The simplicity of her answer carried power. It was enough to make him pause. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She didn't need to. Her reputation, whatever it was, preceded her in a subtle way that he could sense immediately. The seal felt a strange mix of curiosity and respect. He had met many people in his life, people with impressive titles, awards, or stories, but rarely had he encountered someone who commanded attention and curiosity simply through presence and confidence. It was like meeting someone who had been through fire and emerged untouched. Someone whose calm was forged from experience, not luck. "Do you serve?" he asked cautiously, not wanting to seem too forward but needing to understand. Most people with playful nicknames didn't have military backgrounds, and yet something about her energy suggested she had been trained, tested, and tempered in ways most could only imagine. Her eyes softened slightly, and she nodded. "I have," she said. Again simple, direct, and true. She didn't elaborate, but that small acknowledgement carried a depth that words could hardly describe. He realized she had experienced things most civilians, and even most military personnel would never understand. The way she carried herself, the calm in her voice, and the focus in her eyes told him more than any explanation ever could. For a moment, the seal simply watched her. The noise of the bar seemed to fade into the background. The chatter, the clinking glasses, even the music. All of it became distant as he tried to reconcile the image of this calm, unassuming woman with the power and experience her presence implied. He had seen fearless soldiers in the battlefield, had faced life-threatening situations, but there was something about her that stirred a rare feeling of awe. Not intimidation, not fear, but the recognition of true competence. The conversation didn't need to continue in detail. Just by being there, by responding calmly and confidently, she had established a presence that was impossible to ignore. The seal, who was used to being the one in control, realized for the first time that he was meeting someone who could stand on equal footing in terms of skill, discipline, and inner strength. As they sat there, the energy around them subtly shifted. Patrons who had been laughing loudly now spoke in softer tones. Some turned their heads, curious about the quiet, intense exchange between these two strangers. The woman didn't seek attention, yet it came naturally, almost effortlessly. And the seal, usually the observer and assessor, now found himself unexpectedly intrigued, almost captivated. It was clear that this encounter, which had begun as a casual, playful question, was the start of something unusual. A simple question about a call sign had revealed layers of mystery, strength, and experience that neither of them had expected to uncover in a bar that evening. And even though the night was young, the seal already sensed that meeting Viper One would be an encounter he would not soon forget. A story that would linger in his mind long after the bar was empty and the lights were turned off. The seal leaned back slightly, swirling the ice in his glass as he tried to process the calm confidence of the woman before him. Viper One. The name itself was intriguing, almost cinematic, and yet she carried it without any arrogance. There was something about her presence that hinted at untold stories, experiences that most people would find unimaginable. Curiosity gnawed at him. He had asked casually, joking even, but now the answer seemed to carry weight far beyond a simple nickname. "All right, I have to ask," he said, lowering his voice slightly so that no one nearby could overhear. "Have you served?" His tone was careful, a mix of intrigue and caution. He had seen countless people exaggerate their experiences, claiming expertise they didn't have. But this woman didn't have the energy for exaggeration. Everything about her, the calm in her voice, the sharpness of her eyes, the subtle control in her posture, suggested that she had done more than most people could even imagine. She gave a slight nod, her expression still calm, almost unreadable. "I have," she said simply. She didn't elaborate, but the seal could feel the weight behind the words. Those two small words carried stories of missions, operations, and experiences that could fill books, but she didn't need to tell them. He could see it in her presence. He could feel it in the quiet strength radiating from her. She wasn't trying to impress. She simply was. The seal couldn't hide the flicker of surprise that crossed his face. He had faced some of the toughest people in the world, trained to withstand pressure, risk, and danger. Yet here he was, sitting across from someone whose calm and authority made him pause, reevaluate, and listen more carefully than he usually did. The air between them felt charged with unspoken understanding. Two highly trained individuals recognizing a kind of competence and skill that words alone could never fully convey. "I didn't expect this," he admitted finally, with a half smile. "Most people who come to a bar aren't exactly, you know what I mean." His words were casual, but the meaning behind them was clear. She was different. Far from ordinary. She didn't laugh or look offended. Instead, her gaze softened for a moment, and then she spoke, her voice calm and deliberate. "You'd be surprised how many people underestimate someone who doesn't try to stand out. Most think appearance defines ability, but that's rarely true. Strength, skill, and courage are invisible until tested." Her words carried a quiet authority, almost like she had lived them herself, and the seal had the sudden, undeniable feeling that she had. He raised an eyebrow. "You make it sound easy." She smiled faintly. "It's not easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. But those who endure, those who focus, they learn to carry themselves through challenges in ways that most people can't imagine." There was no boastfulness in her tone, only honesty. The seal could sense the depth behind her words. She wasn't talking about barroom bravado. She was talking about real-life experience, trials, and the hard-earned wisdom that comes only from facing danger and surviving. Curiosity pushed him further. "So what kind of missions?" "You can tell me generally, nothing classified." He didn't expect specifics. He just wanted a glimpse into what had shaped her, to understand why someone ordinary-looking could command such presence. She leaned back slightly, her eyes drifting briefly toward the bustling crowd around them. "I've worked in environments most people never see. Dangerous territories, high-stakes operations, critical decisions that affect lives. Sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds, all depending on a single moment. She paused, letting the words sink in. I've learned that control, calmness, and focus are more powerful than any weapon. Those who panic or act hastily fail. Those who endure, survive. The seal felt a shiver of recognition. He knew that feeling, the weight of responsibility, the pressure of life or death decisions. Yet, something in the way she described it so matter-of-factly was entirely different. She wasn't boasting. She wasn't dramatizing. She was simply stating facts, the kind of truths that only someone who had lived through them could express. For a moment, the noise of the bar seemed to fade. He focused solely on her, listening intently. Patrons nearby continued their conversations, unaware of the tension and fascination building at the corner table. The seal realized that he was learning something that could not be taught in books, manuals, or even training exercises. A glimpse into a mindset forged under extreme conditions, honed through experience, and tempered by reality. He couldn't help asking, how do people handle it? The pressure, the fear. His question was genuine, tinged with admiration. Many in his line of work tried to mask vulnerability, but with her it wasn't necessary. She seemed to understand exactly what he meant, without judgment. Fear is normal, she said softly. Everyone feels it. The difference is what you do with it. Control it, focus on the mission, trust your training, trust your team. And you act. That's all. Everything else is just noise. Her voice was calm, unwavering, and it struck him how effortlessly she could convey authority, experience, and trustworthiness in a simple sentence. The seal leaned back, trying to process everything he was hearing. He had met highly skilled people before, but there was something different about her. A combination of quiet confidence, calm authority, and undeniable competence. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, yet she had impressed him completely. He realized that meeting her wasn't just chance. This encounter, sparked by a casual question about a call sign, had unveiled a rare moment of recognition between two individuals who understood the weight of skill, discipline, and courage. And though the night was still young, he knew one thing. This was a story that would stay with him long after the bar emptied. A story of someone who was far more than they appeared at first glance. The bar continued to hum with its usual noise, but for a moment, the seal felt as though the world around him had changed. The woman's presence was subtle but undeniable, like a force that didn't need to be loud to be felt. Patrons who had been chatting and laughing moments before now found themselves glancing her way, drawn by something they couldn't quite define. There was a quiet authority about her, a sense of calm that demanded attention without demanding it. Even the music and laughter seemed to fade into the background as her aura quietly filled the space. He watched her, intrigued and slightly unnerved. She didn't try to dominate the room or make herself noticed, yet she did. Her every movement was precise and deliberate, yet casual enough that it looked effortless. The way she shifted her gaze, the subtle adjustment of her posture, the calmness in her hands as she sipped a drink. Every small detail communicated a level of control that most people spent their entire lives trying to master. The seal realized he had underestimated her, thinking she might just be another ordinary stranger in the bar. He had encountered many people who claimed experience or bravery, but very few had carried it in such a natural, unassuming way. It was almost frightening, in a way, how easily she could command attention without uttering more than a few words. Her presence alone was a statement, and he felt himself compelled to pay attention, to listen, to understand. Around them, the atmosphere subtly shifted. People near their table seemed to sense something was happening, even if they didn't fully understand it. The loud conversations softened, the boisterous laughter paused for a moment, and a few patrons even turned toward her, curious about the quiet force that seemed to anchor the room. The woman didn't react to their attention. She remained focused on the conversation with the seal, maintaining eye contact, her expressions controlled yet revealing nothing unnecessary. The seal, trained to read people and situations quickly, noticed every detail. He observed the way she scanned the room without appearing to, the careful way she placed her hands on the table, the steadiness of her breathing. Each movement told him she was aware of everything, in control of herself and her surroundings, and that she had likely faced far more dangerous situations than anyone in the bar could imagine. "What's your secret?" he asked quietly, leaning in, genuinely curious. "How do you stay so calm, even here, in a bar full of strangers?" She smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly. "It's not about staying calm," she said softly. "It's about understanding your environment, trusting your training, and knowing that panic doesn't solve anything. People often think strength is loud and visible, but true strength is silent, measured, and deliberate." Her words were simple, but they carried weight. They weren't abstract ideas or motivational phrases. They were truths she had lived, principles she had learned under extreme circumstances. The SEAL nodded slowly, realizing she was describing exactly what he had been trained to do, but she had applied it in ways that were her own, refined through experience. He felt a mix of respect and curiosity. He wanted to know more, to understand the depth behind her calm authority, but he also knew that some things were not revealed easily. Her energy suggested that she had survived challenges most people couldn't even imagine. Yet she carried the knowledge of those experiences lightly, without bragging or intimidation. A few moments passed in quiet observation. The SEAL noticed subtle glances from other patrons, small gestures of curiosity, as people tried to understand the unusual dynamic at their table. She didn't react to them at all, remaining focused, unbothered. It was as if her presence alone set the tone for the room. Even the bartender, who was used to handling all kinds of people, seemed to give a little more space around their table, perhaps sensing that this was not an ordinary interaction. "You have presence," he said finally, breaking the silence. "Most people don't even know what that means until they see it." She nodded slightly, acknowledging the observation without comment. Her calmness wasn't about showing off or seeking approval. It was simply a reflection of who she was. The SEAL understood in that moment that her experience, discipline, and control weren't performative. They were real, inherent qualities that she had earned and carried naturally. As the night went on, the subtle shift in the bar's atmosphere continued. People nearby became quieter, more attentive, sensing the quiet intensity emanating from her. The SEAL realized that her presence wasn't just personal. It influenced those around her without her needing to speak more than necessary. It was a rare kind of power, one that demanded respect and attention without force, without threat. He felt a growing sense of admiration mixed with a twinge of awe. In his world, he had faced countless high-pressure situations, evaluated threats, and commanded respect through skill and authority. Yet here was someone who, in a simple bar, commanded the same kind of silent respect, not through fear or status, but simply through her presence, calmness, and focus. By the time the SEAL took another sip of his drink, he realized that the encounter had shifted something in him. This woman, who had responded to a casual question about her call sign with nothing more than 2 confident words, had already begun to teach him something profound. True strength was subtle. True authority was quiet. And true presence could change the energy of a room without a single act of force. For the first time that evening, he felt the weight of curiosity and respect collide. He wanted to know more about her, to understand how she had acquired such poise, such control, and such undeniable influence. And in that quiet moment, amidst the low hum of the bar and the soft clinking of glasses, he understood that this meeting, simple and casual as it seemed, was far from ordinary. It was the beginning of a story, one that would linger in his mind long after the night ended. The SEAL tried to regain his usual composure. He had been trained to lead, to command, to assert himself in any situation. It was almost instinctive to take control, to evaluate a scenario, and to ensure he had the upper hand. But sitting across from this woman, he felt something unusual. His confidence, normally unshakable, seemed slightly off balance. He had met people of great skill before, yet none had carried such quiet authority without the need to announce it. This was different. She wasn't trying to dominate, yet her calm presence demanded recognition. He leaned forward slightly, attempting to reassert himself. "You know," he began, with a half-smile and a tone of friendly challenge. "Most people here wouldn't last 10 minutes in the kind of environment you've probably been in. It takes skill to survive out there. I've been trained for that. But you make it look almost casual." His words were casual, but they carried a subtle challenge, a test to gauge her reaction. She didn't flinch, didn't rise to the challenge. Instead, she regarded him calmly, her eyes steady and unwavering. It was a look that conveyed both awareness and experience, and it made him realize that trying to assert himself in the usual way would accomplish nothing. There was no bluffing here. She had lived through situations far more extreme than anything in this bar, and she knew instinctively how to handle challenges without showing effort. "You're not wrong," she said quietly, her voice calm and measured. "It does take skill, but confidence and control come from preparation, practice, and trust, in yourself, in your team, and in your training. Fear, doubt, and arrogance are easy to display. Discipline and skill are harder to recognize, but far more powerful." Her words were simple, yet they carried the weight of experience. The SEAL listened intently, realizing that she wasn't lecturing or bragging. She was simply stating truths she had learned through life or death experience. He tried again, testing her boundaries. "So, what's your approach? How do you command respect in a situation where you need it?" He expected a standard answer, perhaps a confident posture, a sharp tone, or some demonstration of authority. But she didn't respond the way he anticipated. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't posture, and she certainly didn't demand attention. Instead, she spoke softly, almost as if sharing a secret. "Respect is not demanded. It's earned," she said. "It's not about showing people you're strong. It's about demonstrating, through your actions, that you are capable, reliable, and trustworthy. When people see that, respect comes naturally. Force, intimidation, and words can create fear or compliance, but not genuine respect. True respect is silent. It's earned through demonstration, not declarations." The SEAL felt a chill run down his spine. He had spent years commanding respect in intense situations, often through authority, skill, and decisiveness. Yet here was someone explaining the very same concept in a way that felt almost superior. Not because she had power over him, but because she had mastered the principle that real respect couldn't be demanded. It had to be recognized and acknowledged by others. He took a deep breath, leaning back in his chair, trying to process what he was hearing. The bar around them seemed to fade into a blur. The laughter, the chatter, the music, all became background noise compared to the conversation unfolding at the corner table. This wasn't just a casual exchange. It was a lesson, subtle and profound, in authority, discipline, and human behavior. "Most people don't get that," he admitted quietly, his tone reflective rather than challenging. "They think showing power is the same as earning respect. They confuse fear with admiration. But what you're saying, it makes sense." She nodded slightly, acknowledging his observation without elaboration. Her calmness never wavered. Her confidence never faltered. She didn't need to prove anything. Her very presence, her measured words, and her demeanor had already communicated volumes. The SEAL recognized that he was in the rare position of being both impressed and humbled by someone whose authority didn't rely on shouting or posturing. For a moment, silence settled between them. It was not uncomfortable. On the contrary, it was heavy with understanding. The SEAL realized that he had underestimated the woman from the moment he had approached her. He had assumed she was a civilian, perhaps with a playful nickname, someone he could casually interact with. But she was far more than that. She carried experience, skill, and discipline in every movement, every word, and every glance. Her quiet authority had subtly shifted the balance of power in the conversation, and he recognized it fully. He found himself smiling, a mixture of admiration and acknowledgement. The challenge he had attempted to assert, to test her, to measure his own presence against hers, had evaporated. Instead, he felt respect, genuine and unforced, settling over him like a quiet realization. In that moment, he understood something profound. Authority was not about dominating others. True authority was reflected in composure, skill, and the ability to inspire recognition through action and presence, not words or force. Around them, The bar remained oblivious to the subtle lesson being exchanged. Patrons continued to laugh and drink, but the seal knew he had experienced something rare. This woman, Viper One, had demonstrated a principle he had long believed in but now saw in its purest form. Respect is earned silently, authority is shown through presence, and true power is measured not by how loud you are but by how composed you remain under pressure. By the end of that moment, the seal had reached a quiet acknowledgement. He didn't need to assert himself anymore. He had learned a lesson in humility, strength, and respect, all in the span of a single conversation. And though the night was far from over, he already sensed that this encounter would linger in his mind long after the bar emptied, shaping the way he perceived authority, competence, and true power. The seal had thought he had seen everything. Years of training, countless missions, high-pressure situations, and life-or-death scenarios had sharpened his instincts to a razor edge. Yet, in the quiet corner of that crowded bar, something happened that stopped him in his tracks. The woman before him, with her calm and unshakable demeanor, had managed to do what no mission or operation ever had. She had made him pause, reassess, and feel a mixture of awe, curiosity, and even disbelief. It was a simple moment, almost mundane, yet it carried weight. She had responded to his playful question with the name Viper One. And now, through her calm confidence and the subtle authority in her presence, she had completely shifted the atmosphere around them. The seal, who was accustomed to being in control, to evaluating every situation and asserting dominance when necessary, found himself caught off guard. He tried to smile, to regain composure, but the words of respect, the quiet power she radiated, and the effortless way she carried herself left him momentarily frozen. As he sat there, attempting to mask his astonishment, his drink slipped from his hand. It wasn't dramatic at first, just a slight tilt, but gravity had other plans. The glass of whiskey, filled with ice and amber liquid, teetered on the edge of the bar. Patrons nearby didn't notice at first. A dropped drink was a common occurrence. But the seal's reaction wasn't ordinary. Time seemed to slow as he watched the glass fall, ice clattering against the wood, liquid spilling in a sudden, chaotic splash across the polished surface. He stared at the woman, half in disbelief, half in silent admiration. She hadn't said a single word that night to provoke such a reaction. Yet her mere presence, her quiet confidence, had caused him to break his own sense of control. It was as if the very air around her carried authority, a magnetic force that pulled attention, curiosity, and even the instinct to respect. Patrons who had been laughing loudly moments before suddenly noticed the subtle tension at the corner table. Their heads turned, eyes widening slightly, sensing that something unusual was happening. Something beyond ordinary human interaction. The seal's mind raced. He had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty countless times, but this was different. This was respect earned, not commanded. He had never seen anyone wield influence so quietly, yet so powerfully, that even the most self-assured individuals would find themselves momentarily disarmed. His training told him to assess the situation, to regain control, but for once, his instincts were outmatched. There was no need for words, no need for confrontation. The woman's composure alone had shifted the balance entirely. Around them, the bar seemed to respond subtly to the energy she exuded. Conversations softened, laughter paused for brief moments, and even the bartender, usually unfazed by the chaos of the night, glanced toward their table with a quiet sense of curiosity. The ripple effect of her presence was undeniable. She didn't demand attention. It came naturally, almost effortlessly. The seal, realizing what had just happened, sat there with a mix of astonishment and newfound respect. He looked at her again, studying her expression. There was no smugness, no prideful smile, no satisfaction in seeing his reaction. She simply sat there, calm, poised, and utterly in control. The seal understood in that moment that her power didn't lie in physical strength, in loud words, or even in flashy skills. Her power was in her presence, her experience, and the way she carried herself. A combination of quiet confidence and earned authority that could unbalance even the most disciplined and confident individuals. The ice continued to clatter against the bar, the liquid spreading slowly, catching the dim light of the overhead fixtures. The seal felt a flush of humility as he realized that all his training, all his experience, all the recognition he had earned over years of service, had not prepared him for this. This was not about physical strength, tactical knowledge, or even leadership. This was about a deeper, subtler form of power, the kind that comes from experience, skill, and unshakable self-possession. He finally allowed himself a small, genuine smile, acknowledging the lesson without words. In that moment, the seal wasn't just impressed. He was humbled. He had met many remarkable people in his life, yet very few had the ability to silently command respect in the way she did. The simple act of dropping his drink, unintentional, almost comedic in its immediacy, became a symbol of the impact she had on everyone around her. Even without speaking, she had made him, an elite soldier trained for the most extreme situations, pause and recognize her authority. Patrons nearby whispered quietly among themselves, not fully understanding the dynamics at the corner table, but sensing something extraordinary. The seal could feel it too. In that simple, seemingly insignificant moment, he realized that he was in the presence of someone extraordinary. Someone whose skill, experience, and presence didn't need validation through words, actions, or demonstration. She didn't flaunt her abilities. She didn't boast. And yet, she had left an indelible mark on him, on the bar, and on anyone perceptive enough to notice. As he picked up his glass, careful not to spill more, the seal's eyes met hers once more. He didn't need to say anything. No words could capture the mix of respect, awe, and disbelief he felt. She simply nodded slightly, acknowledging his presence without judgment, and returned to her calm composure. The seal realized that this encounter was not merely a conversation. It was a lesson in true power, influence, and the quiet force of earned respect. By the end of that night, he knew that the image of Viper One, calm, composed, and unshakable, would linger in his memory. Her ability to command attention and respect without effort, to influence without force, and to leave an elite soldier momentarily frozen in awe, had made this encounter unforgettable. And as the bar returned to its usual rhythm, the seal carried with him a profound understanding. True power is quiet, subtle, and undeniable, and it can leave even the strongest people momentarily speechless. After the moment that had left the seal frozen, the tension in the bar seemed to ease slightly, though the air between them remained charged. He had expected this encounter to be casual, maybe even humorous. A playful exchange over a call sign and a drink. Instead, it had become something far more profound. The seal, used to commanding respect and assessing every situation with precision, found himself in the rare position of being truly impressed and quietly humbled. He could feel it. This woman was unlike anyone he had ever met. For a few moments, they simply sat across from each other in silence. The bar's usual hum of conversation and music continued around them, but it felt distant, almost irrelevant. His eyes met hers again, studying her calm and composed demeanor. He realized that her strength didn't need to be displayed. It didn't need words, demonstrations, or any external validation. She had already proven herself simply by existing with confidence, competence, and quiet authority. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and thoughtful. You really know what you're doing, don't you? I mean, not just in the field, but here, in how you handle people, situations, even me. He paused, realizing how strange it was to admit being impressed by someone he had only just met. Normally, he would be the one assessing, evaluating, and maintaining control. But she had shifted that dynamic effortlessly. She smiled faintly, a small, calm smile that carried neither pride nor condescension. I don't try to control others, she said quietly. Control comes naturally when you master yourself first. People respond to authenticity, competence, and calm confidence more than to any force or bravado. Once you understand that, respect follows naturally. You don't have to demand it. It's earned silently, through your actions and your presence. Her words hit him in a way that few had ever done. He had spent years learning how to lead, how to inspire respect, how to maintain authority under extreme conditions. And yet here she was explaining the same concept, the very essence of leadership, in a way that felt effortless and completely true. He realized that she wasn't lecturing him or trying to teach him. She was simply speaking from experience, from the kind of knowledge that could only come from having lived through extraordinary circumstances. Curiosity got the better of him. "So, how do you do it?" he asked, leaning slightly closer, his voice a mixture of admiration and intrigue. "How do you stay so calm, so confident, and still make people listen, follow, and respect you without trying?" Her eyes met his, steady and unwavering. "It's not magic," she said simply. "It's understanding yourself, knowing your strengths, your limitations, and how to act under pressure. It's trusting your training, trusting your instincts, and trusting those around you. When you operate from that place, people notice. They see competence and confidence, and respect follows naturally. You don't have to push for it. It comes from demonstrating your capability in subtle, consistent ways." The SEAL nodded slowly, absorbing every word. He could see the truth in what she said, not just in theory, but in practice. He had witnessed it in countless operations. The leader who remained calm under fire, the operative who acted decisively without showing panic. But there was something unique about her. She didn't need a team, a battlefield, or high-stakes missions to command respect. Even here, in a simple bar, her presence alone had shifted the energy of the room. "You make it sound simple," he said, half smiling. "But it's not. I've trained, I've led, and I've faced situations that would scare most people, and even I can see that what you do isn't easy." She shrugged slightly, maintaining her calm. "It's not about ease. Nothing worthwhile ever is. It's about discipline, focus, and consistency. You act with integrity, you perform with competence, and you carry yourself with confidence. Over time, those qualities build respect, not through words, not through force, but through the way you consistently demonstrate your capability." The SEAL leaned back, letting her words sink in. He realized that this wasn't just a conversation. It was a lesson, subtle but profound, about leadership, presence, and respect. He had spent years mastering tactics, strategy, and field operations. Yet here was someone teaching him, without effort or arrogance, about a fundamental truth he hadn't fully appreciated. True authority isn't shouted. True leadership isn't demanded. True respect is earned silently, through consistent, confident action and unwavering presence. Around them, the subtle shift in the bar continued. Patrons nearby had noticed the unusual dynamic, even if they didn't understand it. There was something magnetic about the corner table, something that drew attention without any overt action. The SEAL realized that she had not only earned his respect but also influenced the environment around her without intending to. That was power, quiet, subtle, and undeniable. He smiled again, this time with genuine admiration. "I get it now," he said quietly. "It's not about forcing people to notice you. It's about being someone worth noticing. That's rare. That's impressive." She nodded, acknowledging him with a calm, confident glance. There was no need for more words. They both understood what had been communicated: mutual recognition of skill, discipline, and presence. In that moment, a silent bond formed between them, one built not on words or appearances, but on shared understanding and respect. The SEAL realized something important. Encounters like this were rare. Most people go through life trying to impress, to assert dominance, or to demand respect. But few truly understand the quiet power of competence, calm, and integrity. And here was someone who embodied that power effortlessly, leaving him not just impressed, but inspired. As the night continued, the SEAL knew that this encounter would remain with him. Viper 1 had demonstrated a form of strength that transcended skill or training. She had earned his respect not by proving anything, but simply by being herself, composed, confident, and undeniably capable. And in that quiet exchange, he realized that true respect was not given lightly, and true leadership was not about force, but about presence. The night had grown darker outside, but inside the bar, the memory of the conversation lingered like a quiet echo. The SEAL, who had come expecting a simple evening of drinks and casual conversation, found himself profoundly changed. The woman across from him, known only as Viper One, had not only commanded his attention but had left an indelible mark on his understanding of skill, presence, and respect. He realized that this encounter was far more than a casual meeting. It was a lesson in mastery and authenticity that would stay with him for a lifetime. Even as the bar returned to its normal rhythm, laughter, chatter, and music blending back into their usual patterns, he couldn't shake the impact of her presence. She had taught him, without a single demonstration of force or ego, what true authority meant. It wasn't about being the loudest or the most aggressive. It wasn't about commanding attention with words, titles, or accolades. True authority, he realized, was earned silently, through consistent competence, unwavering composure, and the quiet confidence that comes from experience. The seal studied her one last time, taking in her calm demeanor, her poised movements, and the way she had carried herself throughout the night. She had remained composed, unaffected by the crowded room, the curious glances of strangers, and even his own probing questions. Every action, every glance had been deliberate, confident, and measured. There was no need for drama or exaggeration. Her strength and experience spoke for themselves, and he had been witness to it, perhaps more directly than anyone else in the bar that evening. He felt a deep sense of admiration and humility. He had spent years in elite military operations, commanding respect and leading in life-or-death situations. Yet, she had reminded him of something fundamental: that respect is never given. It is earned. That presence and skill often outweigh titles and words. That true strength is quiet, steady, and undeniable, often leaving even the most confident individuals astonished. In that quiet corner of the bar, she had redefined his understanding of these truths, and he knew he would carry this lesson with him forever. As he prepared to leave, the seal realized that the night was more than just a meeting. It was a turning point, a story that would linger in his mind long after the lights of the bar dimmed. Viper One had demonstrated something rare: the power of calm authority, of competence that speaks louder than words, and of respect earned through presence alone. It was a form of mastery that transcended professions, status, or circumstance. She was a living example of excellence that could not be ignored, even by someone trained to face the most extreme challenges the world could offer. He left a quiet nod of acknowledgement, a silent gesture of respect, and stepped into the night. The cool air outside was a stark contrast to the warmth of the bar, yet it carried the clarity of reflection. Every step he took was accompanied by the weight of the lesson he had learned. It wasn't just about her story, her experiences, or her call sign. It was about the way someone could influence, inspire, and command respect simply through the mastery of self and presence. He knew that in future operations, briefings, or encounters, he would carry the memory of this night as a subtle but powerful reminder of what true skill and authority could look like. The story of Viper One did not end that night. Word began to spread quietly, among those in certain circles who understood the significance of the encounter. It wasn't about boasting or fame. It was about acknowledging a rare individual whose competence and composure were beyond ordinary measure. Her name, her presence, and her legend grew quietly, respected by those who understood the subtle power of mastery and earned respect. The seal returned to his world, but he was changed. In meetings, in missions, and in interactions with others, he found himself reflecting on the lessons of that night. He approached challenges with a renewed understanding of calm authority, recognizing that influence and respect often stem from internal mastery rather than external displays. And though he had faced countless dangerous and high-pressure situations, he knew he had learned something that surpassed all tactical knowledge: the quiet, undeniable power of being someone worth noticing, someone who commands respect simply by being authentic, skilled, and composed. Even in the years that followed, the image of her remained vivid in his memory. He would recall her calm gaze, her effortless authority, and the way she had shifted not only his perception but the energy of an entire room without a single display of force. Viper One became more than a name. It became a symbol of excellence, of earned respect, and of mastery that transcended ordinary understanding. She reminded him, and all who heard of her story, that true legends are built not on noise or accolades, but on the quiet strength of skill, discipline, and presence. And so, the story of the woman who had made a Navy SEAL pause, drop his drink, and recognize her authority quietly became a legend of its own. In military circles, among civilians who respected extraordinary skill, and in the minds of those who understood the value of presence and competence, Viper One became synonymous with quiet mastery, unstoppable confidence, and the kind of authority that commands recognition without a word. The night ended, the bar emptied, and life went on. But for the SEAL and for anyone who truly understood her story, the impact of that meeting would remain eternal. A testament to the power of being extraordinary in ways that are subtle, deliberate, and unforgettable.